Hello, I'm Ed. This is a follow-up to my 1-minute bike restoration video. It includes tips and things I've learned that may help you with whatever bike project you're considering. Feel free to jump to the topics that interest you. These include stripping paint from the bike, painting the bike, servicing the RockShox fork, removing the bottom bracket, and installing new disc brakes. Now, let's get started. Stripping paint. I'll provide a link to the stripper I used. It works great. But tip number 1, don't do it. Don't strip the paint. Not unless you want to be like Dexter and prep with plastic wrap, rubber gloves, and a face shield and do it for days on end. It's lots of work stripping paint. But if you really want to do it, then go to it. But it took me a month with stripping paint to prepare it for painting, whereas when I did the forks and the crank prep, it only took me minutes with the sanding to get them ready. So tip number 2, if you still want to do it, buy the right accessories. Use narrow plastic putty knives and scrapers to remove the big stuff. They work great on wide spaces. Now for the wrinkles at the welds, the small brass wire brushes do really great. The plastic ones don't hold up, but usually come in a pack. They're very inexpensive at an auto parts store, so it's a tool that I wound up buying 2 sets of them because I went through them so fast. Another thing is a Dremel tool or another brand like Ryobi for the spots. The little wire wheels work great. They get at all these little tiny crevices and a little hard to get spots that almost impossible to dig out with the wire brush. But use caution when you use those wire wheels, because I found out by not using the right speed that the manufacturers recommend that the little wires fly off the wheels. So it's important that you wear some eye protection when you're doing that. Another thing that I found was really helpful was buying sandpaper with the various grits. The auto parts place was limited to what they had, and I found online grit paper that went from 400 to 3,000, which is very, very fine. I'll provide a link for that. So I hope this helps you out if you still want to strip paint from the bike. Painting. Tip 1. Watch the YouTube guy at Ito. That's E-T-O-E. He's the best for painting bikes. He's really great. On the serious side, I recommend buying a good respirator and a mask. They're cheap compared to a new lung. I've included a link below for the one I use below, so it's serious. It's always good to take care of your health. The other thing, when it comes time to preparing the bike, clean it thoroughly after you've given it a light finish sanding. Patch the divots and dents. I used alcohol. I got the spray bottle with the alcohol in it at the drugstore. I used it to clean the surface, and that's after I put the Bondo on it, which I got at a auto parts store, which is the usual putty for using patching divots and dents in cars. If painting bare aluminum, then you'll need an etching primer. I used Rust-Oleum. See the link below. Also, I found an old handlebar, straight handlebar, and I used that as a sample bar. So when I would do the painting, I would paint a swatch of paint on the old handlebar, and then if that adhered okay, then I'd paint the frame, and then for successive coats I'd do the same thing. And this way, if it bubbled or ran or wasn't dry enough, the sample pipe would take the sample handlebars would take the brunt of all of the damage. The other thing I found was I got an old broomstick and I put it in a workmate stand and I use it as a pivot for moving the bike around when I was painting, because there's nothing like a little gust of wind to come up and hit you. And so it's nice to be able to shift the bike one direction or another to keep out of the way of the paint spray. But now let me talk about the decals. Decals are a real pain. Getting them off, I forgot to mention in the last part, but they were difficult to get off the frame because they're underneath the top seal coat. And I had to really scrape to get those off. But the ones on the fork, the RockShox ones, they were only stickers, so I used my wife's hairdresser to get them off. Putting new decals on was not that difficult. All I had to do was follow the directions, although the first set I got from Amazon weren't as good as the ones I got at Etsy. All the ones I got at Etsy, I realized, were coming from the Ukraine after I ordered them, and it took about a month to get here. But the other thing I learned is that after putting decals on, if you want them to stay, you have to put a good overspray on them, and I neglected to do that on my one side, and as a result, they kind of peeled off. So one of those lessons learned. So, well, I hope this little video on painting helped you out. Fork maintenance. Best tip I can give you for fork maintenance is to watch YouTubers RJ the Bike Guy or Sid Fixes Bikes for great explanations on doing fork servicing. Sid, by the way, is spelled S-Y-D. They're both great. Fortunately, my old RockShox XC30, there weren't any specific videos anywhere that I could find that could help me out. So I was on my own when I took my fork apart. What I did is I did buy fork seal kit from Amazon, and I was glad I did, because when I pulled my fork apart, I found that there weren't any seals in the upper portion. I don't know whether they were never put in or whether somebody else had worked on them and they forgot to put them in, but I'm glad I took it apart. The other thing I did was buy a brake bleed kit. I had bought that for some hydraulic disc brakes, but the kit came in handy, especially with the syringe and a little tube that comes with it for putting most of SRAM 15 weight oil I needed to put in the bottom legs. So the other thing is grease. They recommend, the manufacturer recommends recommends their own SRAM butter, but you can buy an equivalent type that sells online, Amazon. RJ the Bike Guy and other people recommend it. Removing the bottom bracket. First, the most important tip for this project is to watch Park Tools YouTube video on the subject. There are hundreds of different bottom brackets, or take it to a bike shop, because most likely you're going to need a special tool. I bought the tool for my Shimano bottom bracket and spent half a day trying to find out whether the bottom bracket shell was left threaded or right threaded. It was a real pain, and it was a lesson learned, so that's my tip. Installing new disc brakes. There's lots of people out there that have all kinds of information about installing brakes, so I'm not going to take anything from them. I'm just going to give you a couple tips I picked up when I was doing my project. First tip. Before you tighten everything down, make sure you have enough slack in the tube or cable between the brake lever and the brake so you can turn the handlebar without restricting its movement. I once got a Walmart bike that had mechanical disc brakes that pulled the brakes every time you turn the handlebar. Not a great thing. The other tip is installing new disc brakes on new wheels is easy using a handy little shim that fits over the disc between the brake pads. You know, they're cheap. Sometimes they come with a the kit, and other times you can buy them on Amazon for next to nothing. So they're really great. See my previous video I made for more details on this. So thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe. Take care.